Hello Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we'll be discussing the Toronto Raptors game against the Phoenix Suns, but before we do that, we gotta talk more draft because I want to make your day a little bit brighter because the game against Phoenix wasn't, that entertaining. It's time to brighten our moods when we take a look at some of the players who are available in this year's draft. Now, again, I have done a lot of these draft profiles so far. I've done one pretty much on all of the prospects in the top 10 or mocked to be in this year's top 10. So if you have thoughts about a certain prospect that you think I should cover, just make sure to check out the description of this video before posting a comment, because there's a lot of people, yelling in the comments saying, why are you talking about the Raptors draft and get this guy? You should be talking about the Raptors drafting this guy, and then it's a person I've already covered. So please make sure to check out the description, press the more button underneath the title, and scroll down, make sure that I haven't talked about them already. But there is a guy that we will be discussing today. He's kind of a personal favorite of mine. He is a guy that I've been watching and am really intrigued with his game. And I don't know if he's the greatest fit. There might be some positional overlap with this player and some of the best players on the Toronto Raptors, but I still really like him, and I would be happy if they were to choose him in the late lottery, so between 10 and 15 if the Raptors drop down that far. The player that I'm talking about is Collin Murray-Boyles, and Collin Murray-Boyles is a power forward center originally from Columbia, South Carolina. And he was recruited by the South Carolina Gamecocks in the SEC. He is a really cool player. He plays a brand of basketball that I personally really enjoy. He's very toolsy. He has a lot of different skills, and he is a smart player that plays the game the right way. And his story is pretty interesting because he had to miss a significant portion of his freshman season with mononucleosis, otherwise known as mono. So he had to skip a bunch of those, but he was still so good that he managed to make the SEC all freshman team, which is impressive. So this is a guy that's been getting it done at the college level since last year. And this year, he has emerged as one of the best players in college basketball. And he has a really funky, unique game that I think basketball purists, I count myself one of those, really appreciate when you watch him and how he plays the game. One of the best things about Collin Murray-Boyles is that he has a ton of tools at his disposal. So he's a really good passer. He has a good handle on the basketball for a big man. He can face up towards the basket. He has a post game. He understands the game at a high level. He plays on the defensive end and on the offensive end. And he has, long arms. His height is a little small. We'll get to that in a bit, but he has a ton of tools. And I think that it makes him an intriguing prospect at the next level. Makes him so that perhaps if he fills out in a bunch of different ways, he could really impact winning at the NBA level. So in terms of offense, one of the best things about him on offense is his footwork. I think he has really great footwork in the post. He has a lot of moves and counter moves in his repertoire that allow him to generate easy looks at the basket. And he has great touch. He is one of the better finishers in college basketball on a variety of layups, push shots, and dunks as well. He is undersized for his position. So he is kind of a power forward, big kind of hybrid, and he's only 6'7". But on the plus side, I think his wingspan is, pretty long. Some sites, I've done some cursory research, say that his wingspan is 7'2", which would be great, but I am not exactly sure what his wingspan is. Although when you watch him and he catches the ball inside, he can dunk pretty easily if he's uncontested or it's an alley-oop. It doesn't seem to require a lot of effort, and his arms look pretty long, especially when he's catching passes in the post. He can sort of outreach people. He is very good at sealing his man under the basket and making himself big for passes. That's a really underrated skill, even in the NBA. One of the best things you can do if you are an off-ball player is to create easy assists for your team, for your guards and your connectors, by either cutting to the rim or, in this case, sealing your man under the basket and making yourself big That's just an easy 2 points. It can really make a difference in the half court when you're able, especially on a mismatch, if there's sort of a scramble and you're being guarded by a smaller player, being able to seal them under the basket, grab the pass, and then use your touch to evade the help defense. That's something that I could really see him doing at the next level. Just a small thing, but something that could add extra points pretty much for free. In terms of his athleticism, I wouldn't say he is like an elite athlete or a freak athlete or anything like that, but he is not a slouch. He has a pretty good first step. So one of the things that he's good at is that he has a pretty good face-up game where he will get into the triple threat position on the outside, and then he can use his foot speed and burst to get past his defender, especially if they're another big. And he has pretty good explosion going to the basket. He can get up and finish plays either with layups or dunks. I think that athleticism is not going to be something that holds him back at the next level. He looks like he'll be able to contribute. He seems to have what I would say NBA athleticism. The biggest problem with Collin Murray-Boyles, CMB, is his shooting. That is probably the biggest problem with him as a prospect, especially if you're projecting him as a forward. So he is only shooting 26% from three, and when you watch him shoot, his shot is pretty slow. There's a little bit of a hitch at the bottom. It's not a great looking shot, and I don't know if you can project him to really get a lot better at the next level. So that remains a concern, especially, as I mentioned, if you are projecting him as a forward rather than as a big. So if you play a person at center, a lot of the time, teams can get away with playing one, maybe two non-shooters. But it's less of a concern if Collin Murray-Boyles is able to play at the center position than if he were to be a forward, because you don't want to have too many non-shooters on the floor at the same time. So that is a concern. It's a red flag that should not be overlooked. And I don't know if it can get better. I don't know if that's something that you can expect to improve. But to get back to the positives, his playmaking as a forward and big is great. He has really good court mapping. His passes are accurate. He's able to find players. He always has his head on a swivel. If he is posted up, it's a really good complement to his scoring. If the defensive team overcommits to helping against him in the post, his playmaking is good enough that he can find teammates, because if you double, as everyone knows, someone is open. And he has a good ability to find that type of player, either if they're on a cut or maybe they're open on the perimeter. He can find them if they're a shooter. He has a really good touch on his passes, and he knows where his teammates are. So that's very good. He also has, as I mentioned, a face-up game where he can get into the triple threat position and drive past his man or hit teammates with accurate passes if they're open. So playmaking is a strength of his. I really like that for him. Defensively, I think that there's upside there as well. So this is a bit contentious, because if you're projecting him as a big long-term, there might be issues with his rim protection, although I think he's a little bit better in that regard than some of the other players in and around this range. He has, as I mentioned, very long arms and pretty decent athleticism, so he can protect the basket a little bit, and he does. And he also can move his feet. He is a pretty good lateral mover, and he can come up to the level of the screen. He can recover. He can do a bunch of things on the defensive end that I think will really help him. He has a high basketball intelligence, and he knows where he's supposed to be in different coverages. He sniffs out plays. So a lot of the time, if a team is running an action and there's a decoy, he'll figure out what's happening and get to the correct player in time to contest a shot or block a shot or get a steal. He can play in the passing lanes. He's actually very good. His steals per minute, quite high for a big. And I think covering the pick and roll could be a strength of his at the next level. So his ability to move his feet is good. He doesn't have to play drop coverage. He can come up to the level of the screen. And I think that there's potential for him to switch onto the perimeter as well. So I think that he has a lot of tools in his tool belt, although I am not really sure whether he's going to be a rim protector at the next level in the way that traditional bigs generally are. He's kind of more of a new school big, maybe more of like a Draymond Green style big, where he's, chips in a whole bunch of different categories and then provides enough rim protection that you're not getting destroyed down there. So I think there's potential for him on the defensive end at the next level. And honestly, he kind of reminds me of Scottie Barnes. The processing, playmaking, ability to play on the perimeter and on the inside, face-up game with a bit of a post game, the passing ability. There's a lot of similarities there. I get it. One of the best players on the current iteration of the Toronto Raptors is Scottie Barnes. So getting another version of him, maybe there's a bit of positional overlap there. Although if you were to play him at center alongside Scottie Barnes, maybe there could be some synergy there, and maybe it wouldn't be as bad of a pairing as you might think. So I'm still going back and forth in terms of the fit. But I just want to say, I just like his game. I'm getting the feeling inside where I say, that boy nice. Where I look at what he's able to do on the court, and just something about it, watching it, I think he's going to be a good player at the next level. He has a ton of tools. He knows how to play the game, has a good wingspan, decent athleticism. I just think he's going to be good. And if the Toronto Raptors, if there's a lot of players that sort of fall through their grasp and they're looking at sort of the, bigs and forwards that are around the late lottery, I think they should consider Collin Murray-Boyles, because I do like him as a player, and I think that he will be a good player in the NBA level. In terms of positives, his touch around the rim is great. His footwork is very good. He has a face-up game. He can score in the post. He can grab rebounds. He can play on the defensive end. With that said, I think that his lack of shooting is a big problem at the next level, and that's really kind of his biggest weakness as a player. But yeah, that's my evaluation of Collin Murray-Boyles. I'd like to know what you think of him. Have you been watching him play? Is he a player that's on your radar? Do you think that this would be too much of a reach? But yeah, make sure to leave a comment. But before you do, always check the description. See if one of the players, if you think that, I have him rated too high, take a look at some of the other players that I've done a draft profile on. If I've mentioned them before, it means that I think that they are probably above Collin Murray-Boyles in terms of where I would rank them for the Toronto Raptors. So yeah, let me know what you think. Always love to hear from you guys, especially when it comes to draft prospects, because that's where we are at this point in the season. We're looking at draft prospects. We're certainly not looking at on-court results, because the last night the Toronto Raptors got shell-shocked by a pretty lousy Phoenix Suns team, and the tank continues to roll on. We're going to start off with player evaluations. We're going to take a look at the players on the starting lineup, and we'll start with Immanuel Quickley. I think that Immanuel Quickley had probably the best game of any of the starters. He had 15 points on 14 shots, so not too efficient, not very efficient. He was 2 of 7 from 3, which isn't very good. 3 of 4 from the free throw line. He did have 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal, and only 1 turnover. And I think just probably the most productive player for the Toronto Raptors in the starting lineup. I think that he was doing a decent job running the offense, although, there isn't a ton of talent for him to find out there. It's pretty much him and Scottie Barnes who are like actual starters, and they started the game pretty well, and then after the first quarter, everything fell apart. And so everybody on the team pretty much was underwater in terms of plus minus, with Immanuel Quickley not much different. He was, doing a decent job. He's had a bunch of pretty strong games over the past month or so. I think he's proven himself to be a pretty capable scorer on the Toronto Raptors. And since he's been back, I've had pretty positive things to say about him. And I think last night he was one of the best of the worst, I would say. So the next best player I would say is Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes had 16 points on 13 shots. He was 1 of 2 from 3, which is encouraging. 5 of 8 from the free throw line. He did get to the line a whole bunch because he was really kind of relentlessly attacking the basket, which you have to respect. He had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 5 turnovers. He was trying to make stuff happen. There weren't a ton of players, to pass the ball to make plays, and unfortunately, it just was not a very good game from a playmaking perspective. Part of that is his teammates. Part of that is just he was a little sloppy with the ball. I think his defense was really good. He was playing Kevin Durant really tightly, guarding him, tracking him around the court. He really gets up to play Kevin. And while Durant did have an efficient night, he only had 14 points, and it was on 7 shots. But Scottie Barnes was pretty much just keeping the ball out of his hands. And he had 5 points, I think, into the third quarter, pretty well into the third quarter, where Scottie Barnes was just, playing him tightly, not letting him catch in space, making him give the ball up when he had it. So he did play good defense, and that's something to point out. Next up, we'll go to Colin Castleton. I think he had an okay game. He is a decent player. He looks like he could be a rotation player in the future. He had 10 points on 3 of 4 shooting. He was 4 of 6 from the free throw line, 6 rebounds, 4 of them offensive. And I think that that's one of his best skills as a player, is that he is able to get on the offensive glass. He can tip it back out. He sort of keeps the ball alive. He gets into the sneaky spots in the defense using his kind of pretty wide body. He has very broad shoulders. He can kind of bully people out of the way and grab the rebound. So that was good. 0 assists, 0 steals, 2 blocks, 2 turnovers. So I think a pretty solid game from him. Nothing to write home about. That's all in 30 minutes. So the production is not incredible, but you know, I think he did an okay job. On the defensive end, I think he did a good job on the offensive glass. And he was pretty efficient when he got the ball, both drawing fouls and finishing around the rim. So pretty good job. Next up, we'll go to Jamison Battle. Jamison Battle had a kind of mixed night. He had 14 points on 14 shots. He was 4 of 12 from 3, which is okay. Not an amazing night. 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers, and 0 fouls. Far cry from his fouling out performance against the Trailblazers. Nobody really played well this game. I'm not going to, go too hard on Jamison Battle. He just didn't really hit enough shots. So I think he can do that in the future. Lastly, we'll go to Jonathan Mobo. I think Jonathan Mobo also, he was being matched up against Kevin Durant a little bit as well. I think he played okay defense, but the production on the offensive end was pretty bad, and his finishing is not good. So he had 2 points on 1 of 7 shooting. He didn't attempt any threes or free throws. He had 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers, 0 fouls, and that's in 27 minutes. So he has to figure out how he can score inside. He tried a running push shot, and it was like quite close to the basket, and he just airballed it. That's not good. His touch obviously has a bunch of problems, and I would like to see him go to the rim more aggressively, try and dunk the ball. It feels like sometimes he catches the ball, maybe he can do a power dribble and try and dunk the ball. He needs to be able to make it easier for him to score around the rim. And right now it just seems like he's not trying to get to the rim hard enough. He's relying on these kind of fading push shots and whatnot. And that's not going to cut it unless you have good enough touch, and he doesn't seem to. So probably the worst player in the starting lineup. And he does have his mask on. Perhaps that's screwing with his ability to see. I know a lot of players don't like playing with the mask, so maybe that's it. But, he's had issues with his finishing for a lot of the season, so I'd like to see him get better there. Off the bench, we'll go to AJ Lawson. AJ Lawson had a good scoring game. He had 12 points on 9 shots. He was 2 of 5 from 3, which is great. 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 0 assists, 1 steal, 1 turnover. And this guy is so funny. Scottie Barnes passed him the ball. It was in semi-transition, so they were bringing the ball up the floor. Phoenix's defense was pretty set. Like it was not like there was a clear lane to the basket, and AJ Lawson just grabbed the ball. He didn't look at anybody else on the court and just drove right to the rim and tried to score at the rim, but wasn't able to. And yeah, that just kind of describes him as a player. He is single-minded. He is trying to score. I like the decisiveness in certain aspects. Like when he catches the ball, it's kind of like Chris Boucher. The shot is going up. You don't have to ask him twice to take the shot, and he's a pretty good shooter. So a lot of the time, that is the correct course of action. If you're a guy who is like Scottie Barnes, you drive into the paint, or Emmanuel Quickley, or any of the other playmakers on the team, a lot of the time you just want the guy to shoot the ball. Like, I'm creating the shot for you, put it up, give me that assist. And that's kind of what he does, but I think he had an okay game. Next up, we'll go to Orlando Robinson. I think he had a pretty strong game. 12 points on 12 shots, so not the most efficient. 8 rebounds, 4 of them offensive, which is good. 3 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers. His finishing, again and again and again, it's not great, but last night it wasn't that bad. He made a couple of contested shots around the rim. The Suns lack size on the inside, so one of the best ways to punish them is get it into your big and have them take a shot close to the rim. And he was able to make enough of those shots that that you can kind of keep them honest. And he's had worse finishing games in the past. He hit 50% of his shots, but all of them were 2-point shots. Take 12 shots, you make half of them, you're gonna have 12 points. 12 points on 12 shots is not great. So Yeah, I wish he was a little bit better of a finisher, but his defense is good, his rebounding is good, his playmaking is pretty good too. And yeah, Jamal Shead also played. He didn't have a good night. He was 1 of 8 from the field with 3 points, 0 of 5 from 3, 1 of 1 from the free throw line, 1 rebound, 4 assists, 1 steal, 0 blocks, 1 turnover. So he's been going up and down. His shooting is obviously very important to his ability to score. I mean, the other night he had 10 points just because he was 3 of 4 from 3, which meant that, he was able to put points on the board. So 0 of 5 from 3, that's not good. Hopefully he's able to work on a shot in the offseason, come back shooting a little bit more consistently, but I usually like what he is bringing to the table. Last night he just wasn't efficient enough. And yeah, that was the game. The Toronto Raptors are getting a lot of heat on social media from other fans being like, why isn't the league finding these guys? They should be investigated for tanking. And they kind of have a point. Don't send this clip to Adam Silver, I beg of you. Yeah, they are playing a bunch of two-way players and 10-day guys and, bench players. RJ Barrett is out with an illness. Jakob Poeltl is resting because it's a back-to-back. Got to keep him healthy. There are a lot of things that, the Raptors could do to win games that they're not doing. And I get it. I get the frustration from other fans and also probably from, the non-tank contingent of the Toronto Raptors fan base as well, even though I think most of those people have probably stopped watching the games at this point because, they're not really trying to win the game. So I get it. The Suns are a bad team, and it looked like the Raptors were just going to be able to beat them in the first quarter because the Raptors came out banging shots, playing good defense, making plays. Looks like the Suns were overmatched even against a skeleton crew Toronto Raptors. And they were locking up Kevin Durant. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you view it, Devin Booker popped off. He had a really good game, 27 points on 15 shots. And yeah, they had some good performances from their bench as well. Also, Ryan Dunn, their rookie, I like him. He's kind of a, jack of all trades player whose shot also didn't seem to be very good in college, but he's come in and been able to hit shots. So, stuff like that happens. The Suns are literally trying to win games. They're playing a bunch of players that they think are going to win them the game, and the Raptors are kind of trying to do the opposite. So you shouldn't be too surprised if the Toronto Raptors end up getting a loss. Next up, the Toronto Raptors play the Golden State Warriors. They play them on Thursday, so there's a 2-day layover, and they are a much better team now that Jimmy Butler is there. He's kind of unlocked Steph Curry. They just look a lot harder to stop, and I think that the Toronto Raptors are going to get their butts whooped by the Golden State Warriors in Golden State. Anything is possible if they play a good enough lineup, but I think that that's a pretty confirmed loss. And the Toronto Raptors tank seems to be rolling along pretty nicely right now. So maybe we'll have another draft episode on Friday. We'll have to see. In any case, that is the episode. Let me know what you think of Collin Murray-Boyles. Is he a player that you would be comfortable with the Raptors drafting if they were to fall out of the top 10? Let me know here in the comments. And also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Toronto Raptors fans. We are the best. And if you haven't, please like this video and also subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel grow, helps the algorithm put this content in front of other Raptors fans like you. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.